My guest is making his second appearance on the pod. He's or was is third chair on Louder with Crowder. Has been featured on Comedy Central and NBC's Last Comic Standing. I'm excited to welcome Dave Landau.
Hey there.
How you doing?
Good. I'm admiring your butterflies.
Dude, oh yeah, all this weird shit in the background,
What is that?
dude.
Well, I know they're
It's
butterflies, but
it's
why?
not mine. That's what it is. It
Oh,
definitely it's like I used to have nothing behind me for all these recordings, and then my girlfriend moved in, and she's like, "You have no pictures of your family. You have no pic. There's nothing in your apartment." And
there's just no history of you.
there there was, but I was planning on moving to New York, so it was just like, oh, I got to get rid of all this shit. And then the
Yeah.
pandemic happened, and then I just didn't ever redecorate. So like when she moved in, she put all this stuff up.
It's good that you're like, I gotta move to New York. I need to get rid of pictures of my
Just
family, all this
anything, and
shit.
just get rid of my
Any,
life.
yeah, anything that reminds me of home or happiness. I'm going to New York. I'm gonna make it big.
Dude, I figured that like I didn't have any space for anything in New York. I mean, you live there. Did
Yeah.
what was your situation like? Weren't you up in like uh Harlem?
I was in Harlem. I was on 135th and Amsterdam. And I lived with yeah, it was yeah, 135th in Amsterdam. It was right by it was nice-ish. It was Harlem. But yeah, it was nice. It was a lot of candlelight vigils in the area from time to time. A little bit of police tape. Then after the pandemic, a lot of fecal matter on the sidewalk.
Did you
We
still have a place there during the pandemic?
I did, yeah, yeah. I rented it to one guy who apparently because I was staying at Anthony Cumia's house recording the show, so I rented my place to one of the rooms to a man who was apparently a male prostitute. I didn't know this, but he went by the Hole, and a friend of mine had found him
The
on
name, the
Grinder.
whole.
Yeah, so he was apparently doing a lot of crystal meth and having all kinds of gay sex in my apartment. I was not aware of it, but he was having sex with men for drug money. And one day the police came and they were looking for him because he had stolen some stuff. And I think I don't know if he took anything from me. I think he did, but he definitely had lots of paid for uh crystal meth supercharged gay sex in my apartment during the pandemic. Nice guy otherwise.
Yeah.
So
Were
that
there
was
any
good.
signs early on?
No, I just he worked at a coffee place, just seemed like a regular guy. I mean, I figured,
Was available at any hour of the day?
yeah, I mean, when I found out about his drug problem, I actually talked to him and said I'd like to help you because that's what you should do to for anybody who's got a drug problem, I think. But yeah, he took off, and then after the pandemic, and a thorough cleaning, he's like, I left you uh I left you a gift, and it was two size, and they were under my bed, like size like Raphael from Ninja Turtles would carry, and they were just under my bed, and I'm like, I don't know why you would assume I want these.
Wait, the size, the long sticks?
No, no, no. Those are that's what Donatello had. Those are, I think, bows.
Yeah, yeah.
This one, I know all my martial arts
Yeah,
came
are they
from.
the like the little hand things?
Yeah, where it's like, yeah, it looks like that. It almost
It's
looks
like a little
like
pitchfork.
a folk up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's sort of yeah, it looks like that. So those two of those were under my bed, and I was like, okay, and okay, whatever. And then he took off, and I stayed in Harlem for a little bit longer, and then I moved out because it was the building. There weren't good people there. Like they had remodeled the places, and there were a lot of really nice families, but they were clearly being taken advantage of, and a lot of illegals there, even though the building was nice. And I found an old article where a family of, I believe they were Dominican immigrants, because most of the neighborhood was Dominican. You could tell by the guy who cut my hair. Um, really never a good job, but he was in my building, so I had to let him. He got better as time went on, but he- I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, they were Dominican, and they kept this family in the basement, and there were like videos of like sewage pipes leaking on them and like breaking on them, and it was really bad, dude. So they were called, I think, Skyline. If you look them up, they're like New York. They're a New York company that leases out apartments. Really, really, really bad people.
Well,
And like when
you
I
had
found that
like,
video,
did
it's
you have like
horrible.
3 different places you were living in then?
I had a few places when I was there. Yeah, I first lived in Brooklyn, which was great. That was fantastic. I loved Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Harlem just because it was closer to where our studio was, because we were kind of near Times Square. So it was really just a short train ride. Plus, I like to walk, so it was like 100 blocks, which sounds like a lot, but it's like an hour. It wasn't bad,
Yeah.
and I like that. So it was. I was like in shape then and happy, and I'm not anymore either. But I was in shape and happy, and you could just walk like 100 blocks, and it was cool, man. So I moved to Harlem, and yeah, like I'm being from the Detroit area, you kind of know what to look out for and what not to look out for. But there's really no city like New York. I mean, anything can happen at any minute, good or bad. And by when the pandemic hit, it was just I'd go down to like the train station, and there'd just be like a girl sucking a guy off, and you're just look over, and I'm like, oh. Okay, so and this is like, broad daylight. Like it just the neighborhood started crumbling because all the businesses were shutting down and it was slowly taking a dive, which sucked because it wasn't like it was this super gentrified neighborhood anyway, but it was like the Dominicans were in one area, then there were like Puerto Ricans and then Mexicans. And it turns out my friend Oscar, who's Cuban, explained to me how they all hate each other for whatever reason. Because to me, being a white guy, I'm like, they're all just Mexican. But I actually found out that they're all from different places. So, and they each group hates the other group for whatever reason. And my building was Dominican.
Dude, I actually had like a bit about that I was working on after coming back from New York. And
Mm.
before I do that, I do just if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, notifications bell, and then if you have a question for Dave or myself, throw it in the comments section. And we are on Patreon now, patreon.com/FNFpod. But yeah, I went to New York and like, dude, there were just so many different types of people. Like there were people I had never like even Peruvian people and fucking
Yeah.
Chilean people. Like that you look at people and like, I don't even know what you are. Like
Yeah.
they're at least in the Midwest where I grew up, like it was like you were black, white, or Latin. Those were the three categories. And then anything besides that, it was just like, I think you're Chinese. That
Yeah.
was like that was it. And
Well,
then
that's what Detroit was. It was like you're black, white, or Asian.
yeah, that was
You just fit into one of those categories. I
those
mean,
were
I
the
had
only
Indian
flavors we
friends.
had. Like there were no
Right.
other. And then you go to New York, it's like Baskin Robbins.
Well, there's more than 31.
Yeah.
People will tell you they're where they're from, and you're like, that's not a real place, is it? And you're like, no, it is. And you're like, okay. And you can't really tell who's from where. I guess it just depends on what tattoos they have sometimes.
Yeah.
The Bronx was big on MS-13. That was a big problem. If you went about 15 blocks from where I was at, that was a big deal. But no, you're right though. Like there's so much culture there that a lot of the foods I wouldn't even understand. You walk into a place and you're like, ah, good, Mexican. And then you look at the menu and you're like, this isn't, I mean, there was rice and some pork,
Yeah.
but you don't know what the
This is
dishes
not
are.
fucking Chipotle.
Yeah, exactly. You're
Yeah.
just looking for the most basic shit. It's really hard to find.
Dude, the Europeans was definitely where it started. Like the line just got super blurry for me. Where I'm like, I knew there were Russian people, like, but then when you like Czech and fucking German and like there's so much representation in New York that like you might know a German person in like different cities or whatever, or like smaller cities, but you don't like come across entire groups of German people in America that often. You're like, oh, this is just that neighborhood. Like it,
Yeah.
it's so crazy.
Well, that's what was crazy about Brooklyn was I lived in Bensonhurst, which was like the old Italian neighborhood. So you had real Italians there. Everybody in the building had a name that I recognized from movies and newspapers and stuff. And a lot of the neighborhood had become Asian, but it was still a very Italian neighborhood. And that's what America was at one point. Like the Italians were in one area, the Irish, the Polish. Like in Detroit, there's parts where you have like Mexican Town, you have Hamtramck, which is Polish. You have a couple areas that still have some of the old feel to it. Not many though. But yeah, it was like the Irish and Italians and good get along. And New York still has, I'd say, of any other state and city, a little bit of that left where you still see the different cultures and the different places where they're kind of segregated to just their own blood and like their own bloodline to their old country.
Dude, I think I would kill myself if I like lived in one neighborhood my entire life in like in this day and age. Like it just I mean I go to places like that and I appreciate it, but I'm like this is not nobody lives like this anymore. Like leave, go to Harlem, like go to Manhattan. You're allowed to do that. You've been like it's almost like they don't have the internet or any interest in anything
Yeah.
besides those blocks.
That's what's crazy is it's like you live in the culture capital of America and they're like, I've never been to Broadway.
It's
And you're
crazy.
like, you're a 60-year-old man that lives in Brooklyn and you've never been to Broadway. Like I went to 30 shows in New York just because I'd walk out of our studio and be like, oh, Clapton's playing. Oh, Fleetwood Mac's playing.
That's
Oh,
so
Run the Jewels
rad.
is playing. Oh, this, oh, that, whatever it might be. Like you could see so many things that I wasn't even aware of that just because there's so many different venues. Like I went and saw Springsteen at like a 500-seat theater, and I'm not even a diehard Springsteen fan, but it's like it's a 500-seat theater to see Bruce Springsteen, and I'm walking down the street and I'm like, well, I bet I can get some last minute like tickets that are a lot cheaper than the $2,000 price tag or whatever it was, and I did. I got two for 700. My friend and I walked in and watched it, and it was like I watched Bryan Cranston do a play called Network. I watched like do crazy cool stuff that you just don't get anywhere else. And all I was doing was walking down the street going, oh, like the options were endless. It was the coolest.
Were you doing a lot of stand up in the city at that time? Like,
Yeah.
so like during when did you have time to do that?
Oh, I would leave the show usually about 6 o'clock and just go get some food, and then I would go down to Gotham usually almost close to every night, and then I would do different sets through the city like the Stand. I really love the Cellar. That was a great place, and I was doing more and more shows there, but then the pandemic hit. But that room's great. I mean, that really is a legendary place. I wish I performed there more. I had just kind of started doing it when everything went, to hell. Um, but yeah, just kind of every night, man. Every night I could, and anywhere people would, have a show, I'd be invited on. And some of the rooms are seriously like 20 seaters in the back of a place. And some of the comedy clubs that you've heard of, like Stand Up New York, you're like, oh, it's got to be big. And you walk in and you're like, holy shit, it's like a shoebox, you
Yeah.
know? But yeah, Gotham is definitely one of the clubs I've always been to. The owner, Chris Mazzilli's always been good to me. My first TV show I ever did was there. So, um,
I just don't
in
understand how
2007.
anybody has time for anything in New York. Like I felt like I was just always like trying to get somewhere. Like there was, and I guess I didn't have like I was taking the train for everything and eating my ass on the train, like not knowing how to ride the train properly. So like going when you could just take one, take two, and like sit in queues and like there's so much of a like an art and science to like getting around New York that if you're the new person, you get slammed by it.
No, because if you're even making money to do stand up, you have to then pay for a train or you pay for a and Uber, which is way too expensive. So yeah, then you get on a train and you don't know where you're going. Like I've been on so many trains, I'm not even kidding, where there's just like an accordion player in front of me, or there's just a guy screaming the Bible at me in Spanish. And there's one I recorded where it was like Super or Spider-Man was crawling all over, like on the ceiling of this train. It's like 5 p.m. and Spider-Man is just crawling all over the place on the ceiling, webbing around, and everybody's looking down at their phones. Nobody gave a fuck. Anyone else on Earth would have been like, "Would you look at that?" And New Yorkers are just like, "Fuck this guy. I'm not giving him a dollar."
It's fucking crazy.
Dude,
It's
and and then you have an accordion player who wants money. You have just it's the worst.
it sharpens
It's
your senses for sure though. Like
it
I
does.
remember just when I came back from New York, there was like a heightened, even just on stage, I was just like I felt I feel similar right now where I've been doing the road more and I just have like more of a backbone, like kind of
Mhm.
like you can't throw anything at me that's going to jar me because I just had to deal with performing at a swingers club, like it's like just
Didn't you just do that?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've done a nudist colony.
That
How was the sex club for you?
dude, I actually this was one of I want to talk about normal world, so let's do that in a little bit, but yeah, let's just talk
Okay.
about the road a little bit. Like the the dude, I have been getting my ass beat this month, and I wanted to
Yeah.
talk to you about. I mean, you started doing the road super early,
hmm
and
That was about 21. Yeah.
and like you still do it very aggressively. Like how many you're on the road 3 weeks a month or something?
Probably about.
Like how do you balance that with like all the travel and because I cannot seem to find a rhythm where like I drove 3,000 miles this month and took like every show that I could and probably about by week 3 I was like fuck like I just staying in motels where I'm like I'm pretty sure I'm getting bed bugs right now. Like did you like what can you do and what can't you do when you're doing the road like that?
It depends. I mean, it depends what level you're at. I mean, right now I don't mind the road because I fly places. I get paid well. I go up in nice hotels because that's in my rider. It's a different time for me now. So that's it's nice, but it is still a pain in the ass. I mean, the travel is really it's awful. I mean, there's no way to ever change that. There's no way to change the fact that, I'm 40 years old. I sacrificed my 20s, my 30s, my not friendships. I mean, I'm still friends with people, but everybody was going out having a good time, partying, doing everything. And I was out working every weekend, every week. And it's not easy. There's such an element of sacrifice to this that I think people don't realize. Um, but that's just something you have to do. The problem is yeah, at that level, the pay has not changed in 20 years that I've been doing it. They put you in hotels that you're right. You have to like I would have to check the sheets for bed bugs where you like lift it up and you stare at the sheets for a minute and just see if the sheets kind of move a little bit, and it's so gross and creepy. And like I've stayed in so many places, dude. I've stayed in places where I'll never forget this. I was in Alabama and I got to this hotel and I turned on the air conditioning and fireflies all came out of the air conditioner. And I called onto the front desk and I was like, "Yeah, there's fireflies like all in my room. It's like a planetarium in here." And they go, "Yeah, yep, it's that time of year." And I was like, "Right, but I don't want to be in a room filled with fireflies. Could I get another room?" And they're like, "They're going to be in all the rooms." And I was like, "Yeah, could I just take my chances?" So they give me a new room. I don't see any fireflies. I turn on the air. I go to bed, and everything's lit up with fireflies. So then I called down to the front desk. And I'm like, I seriously need like another room. I can't just sleep in a room filled with bugs. And they're like, "You want us to send an exterminator?" And I was like, "I guess." And they go, "All right." So this dude shows up, no joke, knocks on the door,
How
and it's
was
just
that
like,
even an option? Like that's so insane that we're
oh,
gonna send a bug guy over to a fucking
yeah,
hotel room in the middle of the night.
but it wasn't a bug guy. it was the maintenance guy there who was just pissed that I had even called down. So he knocks and I open up the door and he's like, "Yeah, you got the flat problem?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm not kidding. He takes off one shoe and then he stands on my bed with his filthy other shoe and starts crushing all the bugs with his shoe. So just like smearing like green firefly glow in the dark stuff everywhere. And then he finally kills close to all of them and he goes, "All set, Your Highness." And I was like, uh, yes, sir. And then he just walks out.
And
And
was this
like,
when you were like featuring or like you started
yeah,
head?
yeah. I was
Okay.
middling. Yeah, it was middling in Alabama, and that was one of many, many stories. Dude, there's so many places where I got put up where it was just, dude, hookers. I remember this drugged out hooker was just banging on my door one night. She's just like, "I need a lighter," and I have a cigarette in my mouth, and the room was like made of cinder blocks for some reason. It's the worst hotel I've ever been in, and you almost don't see that many because even like the Red Roofs and other like extended stays, like hotels that are basically just used for human trafficking, still try to like pepper it up a little bit now.
Yeah.
They try to have like a lot of the like rundown hotels you really don't even see like you used to see. But yeah, I'm just like in there smoking and I'm like, I don't have any I don't have any a lighter. I don't smoke. She's like, "I need a fucking lighter," and just she's just kicking on the fucking door. And I look outside and I can see her, but I can also see a guy standing next to her, like hiding, like by the door. So I know that if I open the door, this guy's gonna club me and they're gonna rob me. So I call down to the front desk, and the guy's like, "Yeah, she does that." And he's like, "Don't open it. Trust me, don't open it." I was like, "Oh, okay." I'm
How
like,
is
"Should we
this a
call the?"
repeated issue and not like it just
Yeah,
it's fucking ridiculous, man.
wouldn't call the cops, wouldn't do anything. They're like, "Yeah, it's just." And she was just this cracked out whore, and I'm like 21, 22 years old, scared. I have no money. I have nowhere to go. I have one credit card, which I just use for hotels, which I only got because when I first did the road, I did the Atlanta Punchline, and they like, "We need a card for incidentals." And I was like, "I don't have a credit card. I ain't give you money." And they're like, "No, we need a credit card if you want a hotel."
And you
So I
just
had to like have my mom call, put down a credit card.
Jesus Christ. So
I never wanted debt like that, so I never got one. Now I'm just, now I have to. But
how did you keep I guess where I'm at right now is like this month it stopped being fun doing stand up. Like I was down in
Mhm.
Portland before that swingers club and I was talking to another dude and I'm like, "Man, this is I'm doing this kind of like more full time now and left that other job I was doing and I just feel like I stopped looking forward to going on stage. I wasn't like coming up with new stuff as much and like how long I mean, did you have some kind of balance that you found in doing that like that terrible work or is it just like literally how much pain you can suffer?
it's both. I mean, it's all of that. I mean, when you're at a swingers club, for example, and there's people like human centipeding in front of you. I like, were they fucking in front of you?
That it sounds worse than it was for sure.
Oh, that's good.
Like
Okay.
it
Yeah, because
was
like,
the show before the show.
okay, because I did a nudist colony with Matt McClowry who does a joke about it. And
It's
it's like
so funny.
I got brought up on stage by a guy in a tuxedo shirt who looked like Norm on Cheers. And he had a micro penis. So it just looked like he had a big hairy pussy. And then I went up on stage, like just a room of just and it just smelled like wet ham that's kind of went bad, and it was just it was just so weird. And you have the guy driving us around who's fully clothed. It's like, "Yeah, my parents own this, they it's not about sex." And we're like, "Yeah, no, it is.
It's the
It's
community
exact."
aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's always
Oh,
like something they're trying to like kind of explain to you where it's like it's not just the fucking. It's
yeah.
dude,
It's not that
they
we all walk around naked and that I was brutally molested through my entire childhood. It's that this is totally normal. We're just, free nudists. And then we found out a guy was arrested who was a member of the nudist colony. at like the local casino for like jacking off and drinking his own piss.
Jesus Christ. The weirdest
Anyway,
thing, the weirdest thing with that swingers club is we did the show and
the
they had
days.
like an educational room is what they called it. And
Oh, that's good.
it's a huge heart-shaped bed with a projector screen above it where they're just playing porn. And as soon as our show was done, they're like, "Okay, well everything's open now." And literally that like educational room is for people to go in, fuck on that bed, and then everybody in the room just watches. And there was one
Wow.
guy, I don't know, like he looked like he would be like the head of like a biker gang, just like a big bald guy, like leather fucking vest or whatever. And he just goes in and he just sits down comfortably like on the head spot of the couch where and then
Ugh.
people just flood and there was just this weird energy of like who's gonna be the first like who's gonna like crack the seal. And it was just like I get that that's
That's
what
when you
some
felt a hand on your neck pushing you.
and the lights just went out.
Yeah,
I
you
bought
woke
your
it.
merch. It's time to pay me back.
Yeah, you woke up 4 blocks away.
And it, dude, there. I think what annoys me more than anything because I enjoyed the like I was like, oh, I kind of like it was. I never been to something like that. Like I got to see what that's like, but I hated how nice they all were. Like I
Mhm.
don't know what I expected, but they were like, yeah, no, this isn't. With the guy, the bartender, he's like, hey man, if you come in here, don't think that just because you're coming in here means you're getting laid. Like this is a social club, and I was like, what the fuck? And clearly, that's what like a lot of guys go in there thinking, like, oh, if I just go in here, I'm getting laid.
Yeah, well, sure.
It's
Yeah, he's like,
fucking weird.
listen, we got dignity. We also have herpes
And a
and many
glory
other.
hole.
Yes, by social club we mean diseases. We spread them about. Yes, there's 2 bathrooms. You're going to want to choose the right stall. One stall to be
We share
cough sit in.
everything here.
We we share a meal that is aka your dick. We yeah, I think you're at a point where I totally understand. Like I was bitter for a long time because in like 2007, for example, I did a show called Live at Gotham, and they're like, you're gonna get a presents the following year, and everything was following suit and stuff, and then things didn't flesh out. Then even when I got Letterman, Eddie Brill ended up getting fired, so I didn't get my Letterman spot, and like I was gonna do Conan, and then I got in kind of an argument with the booker, which was my fault. And I like these different things happened, and I became very, very bitter. And when you're on the road like that, like, dude, I did bottoms of strip clubs. I did, yeah. There's really people would always say, "Don't get bitter, don't get bitter, don't get bitter." And I knew a lot of people before they popped. I remember like Billy Gardell right before he got Mike and Molly, and just how just like kind of broken he was from doing the road for 20 years. And I remember so many people who were just on their last legs, and just because it wears on you. You're going from place to place, you don't know anybody, it's not healthy, you don't eat good food, you become kind of lazy. There's not an excitement in you to create more because you're just going up in these places that don't really. And this is like, for me, a lot of that was like any idea of like doing something on YouTube or anything else, or even a podcast, like that medium didn't really exist. I started doing one, but it ended up being a problem. I focused a lot on helping a lot of other people who didn't pay it back, and not that I wanted them to, but like I've always, my own thing is like I was always good to other people. I was always focused on what people thought. I was always where, and I I guess we all do that to a point, but part of life I've eventually learned is like you have to realize you're not going to be happy. It's just part of it. I mean, I know that sounds bad, But there's nothing in life that guarantees you happiness. Like no matter what you get, there's always going to be this next level and this next level and this next goal and this next attainable thing. The only thing you can do is try to find peace with where you're at and keep pushing forward. Like you have no control over where you're at now, except to try to take care of yourself, push forward, do what you can, forgive your past or whatever it is, and move on. Like that's what I've learned about everything. I struggle all the time. I've made so many bad choices in my career. I mean, but that's part of it. You have to fail forward. And I still do, it's like I'm releasing an hour special finally, and I haven't done that until now because anytime I've ever created one, I've just put it on as an album. So I've released 3 albums. I never I never cared. I have to look at everything like a learning experience. And eventually you have to kind of look at it and go, well, I can't really just care about what everybody else thinks about me. I can't really care about, I just have to focus on me and take care of the people who I love and take care of, my family. My son is the number one priority. But when you're at your place, it's like, what is your goal? You really have to set a goal for yourself other than, all right, because you'll have a goal like I did, for example, where I'm like, oh, I just want a feature. And then you feature and you're like, this isn't satisfying at all. And then you're like, I want a headline. And then you headline and then you're headlining for shit money and you're like, this isn't satisfying at all. And because you're not playing the best rooms and you're not being treated the best. But then all of a sudden you're headlining big places, but maybe you're not happy because you're not doing maybe some stuff that's really near and dear to your heart. And there's a lot of stuff that you're going to deal with that's going to make you bitter. And then the worst thing is to compare yourself to other people. Like once I started being happy for other comedian success, it made me a lot happier because I just was like, oh, that dude's really funny. Like I once I started just going, oh, like I don't look at a Nate Bargatze special and be like, why does he have that? Like he's great. Like Shane Gillis has emceed for me before on the road. Now he's selling out theaters like 3 nights in a row because he deserves it. I mean, he's a guy who got canceled. I watched get dragged through the mud, treated like garbage. I took over his show at Compound for him. And it's like, why be resentful and why not just be supportive? And I don't and I look at that, and it took me a long time to get there because I've had so many people resent and hate me that I know what it feels like to be on the other side. Like anytime you get this little bit of success comes this giant amount of hate. And it sucks because no matter where you go and no matter how high you get, that follows you. So it's like unless you are able to make peace with the fact that this is where you're at and that you have to keep taking the steps that you need to do, you're never gonna be content. But part of comedy is you're never going to be necessarily happy. I think that's in any job, but you're never going to necessarily be happy because what's the end game? Are you ever going to be the best at it? Probably not. Are you ever like who's the best at it? It's all subjective. That's the fun thing about comedy is nobody will ever perfect it. So realize that when you're on your journey, that it's all about the journey and there actually is no destination. And it'll take a little bit of weight off your shoulders. But yeah, it's the truth is, dude, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna take years off your life. You're gonna sacrifice a lot and you're gonna give up a lot of friends. You're gonna give up family. You're gonna give up opportunities. And you have to be willing to sacrifice all that and not be mad at your choice.
How do you like what has helped though to make those experiences better? Like
Heroin.
hard drugs,
uh
relationships with
Gambling.
those hookers.
Gambling took half my life savings. I have um alcoholism, that was good. For the first
I when I was
six
at this
years in
gig,
comedy.
when I was at that gig in Idaho last weekend,
Mhm.
I was thinking to myself like, what the fuck would Dave have done in this situation? And then I thought about it. I was like, oh, he was still drinking when he was in doing shows like this. Like obviously, just get hammered drunk.
Oh yeah, I probably would have if I was drinking then, I would have probably got hammered drunk. Yeah. I wasn't a guy who like got laid on the road because I was always with somebody when I worked the road.
Yeah,
Like I never understood that people who were like, yeah, I do this for the puss. And I was like, well, I do it because I like comedy.
yeah.
Because It's really why I did it. It wasn't for any other reason.
What was your routine though? Did you just like go back to the hotel room and watch shitty TV?
After I got sober, before.
Both, I guess. Like,
Well, I couldn't really tell you before. I would probably go to a local bar. I never really got drunk with the staff because I never wanted them to see me like that, but I would usually go with whoever the feature was, get absolutely annihilated, go back to the hotel, wake up at 3 p.m., try to put myself together, have a few, hair of the dog drinks, and then do the show, wake up and repeat. That was pretty much what I did. And then I would book my schedule, which I still do. I still book on a calendar that's on paper, like it's 20 years ago, just because that's how it works well for me.
yeah.
And I would book everything. I would try to route my stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to West Virginia, then I go here, I go here, I go here, I go here. And then, I would just try to make sure that whatever I did, like, it made some kind of sense to where I was making some kind of money, or where what I did, where if I was losing money, I could go show myself somewhere where I thought that I could move up as a headliner. Like if it was a bar in Minneapolis for $100 where I knew I was going to lose money or whatever it was.
Hmm.
Um, my routine was, yeah, very much that. But once I got sober, I had to come up with the routine of, you know, yeah, I get up. I usually will work out. I or try to. I mean, look at me. But I I don't eat that well. I've been, it's because I've been on radio now for 5 years, so that shifted everything. But when I was on the road, yeah, it's like I wake up, I get up, I go through my phone, I advertise shows, I respond to people. I do a lot of stuff that, a lot of times people say don't do, but I think sometimes you get these messages that, especially involving like addicts and stuff, I'm happy to respond. And I do that, and then I talk to my son, and then I write for a little bit. I write whatever it is, that I need to write, even if it's just a journal, but I prefer to like write sketches, whatever it is. Or I have to write for my radio show, then I do two shows. Then after Matt McClowry, who's my opener and works out like 2 hours a day, usually wants to eat Taco Bell, so we end up going there. And then I just come back and like that. I try to flip the channels and watch some shitty TV, and I usually pass out before I pick something.
Yeah.
And I wake up and do it again. Now when I was on Crowder, it's like you wake up at like 6 a.m. You've been out writing until 11 p.m. or from 11 to 1 sometimes, depending when you get stories. Then you're writing during the day, you're doing the show from 10 to 11:30. It's pretty erratic. And then on top of that, I'm raising a son, and then I'm touring, I'm doing all that stuff, and it's a lot. It's hard to deal with all of it, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I'm amazed. And you just released this new sketch show,
Yeah.
Normal World. What was the idea of that? Like, how did that come about?
Normal World was me, a girl named Angela, and Bryce. All were kind of trying to think of an idea, and we wanted to create this kind of like dystopian nightmare sketch show, but not really make it that crazy, just make it where it's like kind of the world now. So we wanted to just do at least a pilot episode, throw it out, see what the feedback would be. So we spent about a year, I funded it, and we got places to film, and Angela did the wardrobe. Bryce is an amazing director. My friend Ken edited a ton of it, and my friend Matt McClowry wrote it with me. And we ended up filming it, putting it out, and like, dude, the feedback has been amazing.
Really?
Like, yeah, people love it. And we're really trying to get it. We have a couple offers, and I'm really trying to get funding to make it into a full season, because my first love was always sketch. Like, I started at the Second City. I've always wanted to do sketch comedy. Like, this has always been like a dream of mine. So to actually just make it and put it online and have people like it has been really exciting.
Has the like you've gotten good feedback? Has there been any issues with like just when you release comedy on YouTube, like there's a lot of power of the people watching it to flag it and complain about it. Have you had any issues with stuff like that?
Um, The only thing that got removed was on TikTok, which was a Manpack's Pearl Harbor commercial,
Yeah.
where it's just me talking about like it opens by me saying like how do I word it? I go oh yeah, you go, I identify as a man, but my pussy, that's a different story. And the whole thing is basically about jamming a tampon down your dick hole against God's will. But it's not actually making fun of anybody who's trans. That's the thing, is it's just a tampon for men. It
Yeah.
makes no sense. Like
Yeah.
it's just so even when people watch it, they kind of have to be like, is this, but it's not. Unfortunately, the overlords at most social media companies realize that it's just making fun of everything going on now, where it's just absurdist humor,
Hmm.
as opposed to TikTok, where first they took it down and then I fought it, and then they put it up with a warning, and then they kept complaining, and then finally they took it down. But that was the only issue.
Like, so if you do make this into a full season, though, are you like, how many episodes is it gonna be? Is it gonna stay on YouTube, or what's the plan?
It would probably have to be off YouTube and go somewhere else. I mean, I would put it up there for free, but I do worry about that because it's like you said, there's so many things now that go against comedy or everything that's canceled and everything that people get upset about. It all just comes down to being taken out of context or being taken wrong and being misinterpreted, is what it seems. So it would have to kind of go on a streaming service, I would assume. That's why
What was
I'm
the name
debating
of
on
the
where to put it.
Pearl Harbor tampon?
It
I'm
was Manpack's Pearl
man.
Harbors, because Pearl Harbors was a bloodbath and it was very manly.
Yeah.
Pearl Harbors. Yeah, so we called it Manpack's Pearl Harbors, and it's just me standing there just with white pants covered in blood.
Yeah.
And then like a missile just shoots on, like a missile tampon with a Japanese flag shoots onto my crotch and just explodes the blood away. And I'm like, thanks, Manpack's Pearl Harbors.
Dude, I watched the whole thing, and your your buddy Ken, you said, like, shot it all.
My buddy Bryce was the director. He had a lot of the vision of it. And then my buddy Ken did a ton of the editing, and he also directed a movie I made called The King of Detroit.
Yeah, yeah, I
But
remember
yeah,
that one. That,
yeah, it
like,
was
this
my
is
friend
just,
Bryce. Incredible work.
yeah, it's great, and all the, like, I think my favorite thing, I like the last sketch the best. The like
Demon Molesters Express.
you're a good actor, dude. Like,
Thanks,
I
man.
didn't realize how strong of an actor you were. But that, like, the CGI of it was so good, and then all the in between things, like the Friends fountain, where
Yes.
they're like slowly, like,
Just getting vaxxed and hit with syringes and they're
and,
slowly collapsing.
yeah, and like in between, you come back to it, and they're all like they're like foaming
Yes.
at the mouth.
Yeah.
It's super funny, man.
Thanks.
I enjoyed it. It was, I know how much of the sketch stuff like you're into doing, and that was killer to see it. Like, what is it though that you prefer? Because you've done stand up for 25 years, right? Or like 20 years.
20. Yeah, I'd say that I fully started and went into it in 2004, so like 19 years. But then I started at Second City in 2001 when I was 19. Like right when I got out of high school, I did that and I started taking theater and film classes as well.
Yeah, Mike Eshak was in that with you, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I just worked with him during the competition out here, and it was crazy. He's like, "Yeah, I started with Dave Landau." Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Yeah,
wild.
Mike's great, dude. I was always wondering when he would do stand up because he had such a good presence for it.
Yeah,
And he did improv for so long. He really stuck with it. And I'm really happy to see his success in stand up
dude, he's
because
blowing up.
yeah, he's doing great, man. And he should. Like he's one of those people who I know is dude, he's been hustling. That's the thing is since '01, I've known him. I remember I pulled up he pulled up next to me in the parking lot of this. It was the Second City. It was right next door in this parking garage in Detroit. I had my Buick Regal and I was in my fucking tracksuit. And I got out and Mike got out and he was this super friendly dude, just like, hey man, what's up? Oh, are you going to Second City? And just I've liked the dude since.
Yeah, it was interesting working with him because we were in that competition, like the first round. it was pretty tense for everybody. And then like
Sure.
second round, he kind of opened up a little bit, and I got to see another side of him, and he's like a really sweet dude, and like I'm glad I got to meet him. He's fucking funny too. Like he's got some great stories.
Oh yeah. Well, and he's also a guy who looks very intimidating if you don't know him.
Oh, for
And for
sure.
some reason now he looks way more intimidating than he did when I met him. So when I see him like on stage, I'm like, wow, that is a different look, because he's gotten like more jacked and
Oh
more
yeah.
like, bearded. He's
Yeah,
more,
he's got like he literally was like carrying around overnight oats, and like he's definitely like
yeah.
built now. But he was also saying he's like, dude, I'm fucking old. Like I like I have to do this stuff now or else I just get fat.
Yeah, yeah. I know the feeling. I had overnight oats this morning, but then I put honey in it.
Just ruined it for you.
Yeah, it was good. It didn't ruin it,
Yeah,
but it ruined my body.
exactly.
That's the thing is they keep saying your body's your instrument, but it's not. It's not a good one.
Yeah, yeah. As long as it turns on.
Yeah, it's really all it is. It's an old broken amplifier. No, that's cool though that you did get that opportunity because that's one of the guys you do want to see because he's a guy who, yeah, for years, I mean, he's done a ton of acting and he's a great actor, but it's just cool to see him kind of take on another beast because really stand up and improv are very different, but now because of people who are like like a Rory Scovel or certain people who have brought the improv idea into stand up, Greg Proops. You see how valuable it is to kind of do both, and I love the fact that I've done both.
Yeah, it's I definitely like seeing both styles, and at least doing these like gigs on the road and stuff. Like I definitely have leaned on just it's hard seeing somebody when they have no off the cuff, like just they have no preparation for that at all, and like
Mm,
basically if they don't have that and can't respond, it's just like, oh, they're just gonna bomb for like the next 30 minutes because they can't address this situation.
right.
It's brutal.
Well, yeah, that's why. Like, if you're not, that's the level of like being fearless. I don't think actually exists unless you're like Jocko Willnick or something. But I think for the most part, it doesn't really exist, and there's still nerves you're gonna have. But that's the part when you realize that it can be fun really helps. Like I used to get like people would love when I would go at an audience member for like talking or heckling because I would be brutal. But one day, my friend Brad Scott said to me, it was probably like 10 years ago, he's like, why are you so mad at that table? Like, you don't have to address every noise you hear in the room. And I was glad that somebody said that to me because I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, they were talking. It was rude. And they're like, he's like, I know, but you were killing. And then you just stopped to fucking be mean to a table of girls. There's no need for that. He's
Yeah.
like, you could have just kept going and it would have been fine. And I thought about that and I realized like, oh, so if somebody says something, I can just be jovial back, or I can do this. And I mean, sometimes you're going to fall into those instances where people are like, well, what if you get heckled? And it doesn't matter. It's just part of the career you've chosen.
Yeah.
And once you realize, oh, I don't have to get angry, like it really does benefit you. Like because there's a difference between somebody being vile and somebody being chatty or aloof or maybe just agreeing with you. That's a weird heckle where they're just like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
right,
Yeah.
that's right. And
Well,
you're
we had
like,
that squeaker at our show where it was like
yeah,
the lady sounded like a dolphin. Like after every time she started laughing, she just started like squeak laughing, and
yeah.
that's a whole different like you you at some point you got to address it.
Yeah, well, and that's why I even put a clip of it online because it was just fun to be like, so are you a dolphin who just got out and you're putting water on yourself to be in our habitat? Did you choke on a dog toy? Like there were so many different things that like I ended up saying to her and you said to her.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was like, but it wasn't done in a way that made her want to leave. It made her just want to laugh harder. And then it made the audience embrace her laugh so she wasn't embarrassed
yeah,
like he was saying, and one of the best things was I told a joke and it got a good laugh, but then she didn't laugh. And I was like, boy, when you don't hear the squeak, you really notice it. And that's always fun because it's like the weird laugh doesn't come, so it still feels like a joke bombed. So now I'm laughing at the failure of it.
That's fucking
And
great.
she was so sweet after the show too. And it's like I realized there's a lot of people who, when that's happening, you might have somebody on stage who's more of an amateur, might be like, what the hell's wrong with you? And sort of make it so it's awkward for everybody. And you went up there and just embraced it, which allowed me to just embrace it even further. And then she had a really great night and came up and told me, like, what a great night it was, and commented on the video. And that's how you should handle things like that. Like, we're comics. I mean, you can't, we put ourselves in this position where we have this ideology of we're doing something immensely important, and we're not.
Yeah, no.
We're just telling jokes to people who paid to hear jokes. And I mean, I do think that what we do is great, and I think that you should take pride in it and be the best at it you can be. But the idea that there's so many shows that like dissect it and the meaning of it, and it's like, no, you tell jokes to people who are buying drinks and relate to you for whatever reason. So just do that and realize that and be the best at that as possible. It's not gonna, you're probably not gonna change a lot of lives. I've had a lot of people come up to me who have been like, I got sober because you said this on a radio show. And I was like, wow, I should take my own advice. So I just think part of that happiness is just not getting bitter with where you're at too. I mean, I guess it circles back to that. Just doing your best to not get angry with any current situation.
Oh, it's miserable though, because you're like, you need the self obsession to have the confidence to go up there. Like
Mhm.
it's required to, like, you have to feel like I deserve to be up there, but you need the humility to like check yourself. Where you're like, yeah, they're mainly here for the chicken wings. Like that's they're like, that
Well,
place has
especially, yeah.
there's free food, or there's free tickets, and we're like, the food's not bad there or whatever. But it's I do think one of the reasons why you and I connect is we both are from the Midwest, and comics on the coast, from what I've noticed, is like they got that, like, their eyes are so much higher. Like they're like, oh, I deserve to be. I mean, I cannot tell you how many fucking people I've heard say, like, I want a Netflix special. I want a Netflix special. I'm like, you guys, like, that's not even like that's not what that was 10 years ago. I mean,
Mhm.
the whole model has shifted already at this point. Like, if you're not putting your stuff out yourself, you're an idiot, kind of. And it it's just like, I do think there's some pride in being able to connect with that group of people that, like you're talking about. It's like just showing them a good time. The problem is that I'm feeling or experiencing is like the getting to those places, the, like, the people that you have to be around and work with and stuff. Like, it was there anything that you found that, like, kind of took took some of the, I mean, I know you started working with Matt, and that, like,
Mhm.
helped having him on the road, but were there any other things that helped make it better?
I mean, there were some people that helped me over time when I was on the road. I mean, my a guy named Henry Cho is a real religious comic, helped me when I first started. I was a lot cleaner then. Certain people would open up doors. I got to open for Chappelle like when I was like 21, I think. And then I ended up opening for him a couple times. There were these things that made me keep going, these moments. To make the road more bearable, yeah, going on the road with my friends obviously would help. Being there with somebody would help, absolutely. That was a benefit. But yeah, to really, I don't know, to really say to keep it going and to keep going at it, it's hard because yeah, you think you belong up there to a degree, but I only felt that I belonged up there because I failed at everything else in life, and all I ever knew that I was good at seemed to be making people laugh. That was it. So it wasn't really like this thing where I felt like everybody needs to hear me and everybody needs to know. I'm like, oh, that's the thing I can do because that's what I get. So I should try to do that. Like that's why I started at Second City. Like I could be part of a cast, and then people liked my writing and were like, you should try stand up, you know. Um, so it was just pushing and pressing, but it's very hard because yeah, you do want to get your story out. That's what I want to do. You do want to get your jokes out. You want to be acknowledged for those jokes. You want to be liked for that. You want to have a fan base for that. I'm lucky that I have that now. You know, to a degree. And it's like you do want that. And the problem is some people get that off of one TikTok video now, and some people get it after 20 years of stand-up and road comedy. There's no real recipe anymore. And there's not necessarily lasting quality, but there's this weird everlasting fame that didn't exist before, to where like, okay, let's say you're like, I don't know Crystalia personally, I don't know anything that he did, but like let's say that's a blurb in the news at one point, then he's forgiven. Well, now you have one story that's this everlasting thing that he'll be known for. Or you have Louis C.K., this everlasting thing that he'll be known for, even though he's this brilliant comic, and he just did a special that he, you know, put out himself from Madison Square Garden, sold out. There's still this idea of like, oh well, he masturbated in front of two women who gave him permission to, so he's a monster. There's still that narrative out there. So it's tough to say how to navigate it or how any of it works. Like the only true moment you actually have in stand-up comedy is the moment you're on stage in front of that audience. That's it. That's all you get. So like as far as the art form itself, those are the moments you have to embrace. As far as getting there, dude, I've heard put out content. That's what I do. I've heard this, that, do this, but it's like there's really no I couldn't tell you how to get from one place to another because I've made so many right and wrong choices. And the thing that you have to get used to is hearing no.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard for every seriously 200 no's, I've gotten a yes, and I've pushed to get those yeses. And especially now where you're at that thing where, yeah, bookers are going to ignore you. They're going to tell you they don't need features because people bring their own. They're going to, like, you're at a point where it's very, very aggravating because it's hard to get work. A lot of the work you get is not good. Um, but it is all how you perceive it. But it's a difficult point. I mean, but at this moment, you have to be in that point to break past that point while putting out content.
Hmm.
I mean, they always say like I never believed that doing terrible rooms made you a better comic. I don't believe that still because a lot of times it teaches people to pander to the lowest common denominator of like a drunk audience, and that's not a good thing at all. But being in a room of 10 people that are good audience members and will listen to you is a great thing because it teaches you how to work a room and how to be conversational.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever nuggets you can get out of where you're at right now is all you can do, and try to be on the road with people you like and try to take everything with a grain of salt. But it's like, yeah, you're gonna hate it and you're gonna be bitter at points. I mean, I don't know one comic who hasn't been bitter. I don't know one.
Yeah.
And they can say that they weren't, but that's a lie. I don't know one.
And I want to preface it by just saying like I think what it is I overreacted to like, oh yeah, I'm going to be done with this job. I should take on all the work that I possibly can.
Mhm.
And I probably said yes to some things that like if I would have spent more time thinking about like, yeah, you just can't say yes to everything. Like, cause by the time you're in Idaho or you're in like where the swingers club or whatever, you're just not the best version of yourself. And then you're like,
Mm.
you're, I just don't ever want to be doing stand up. I didn't get into stand up to be unhappy. Like I was already unhappy, and this was the thing that was kind of making me happy. And I just don't want it to stop being fun. So I'm trying to figure out how to, move the needle like that, but then also still have fun doing it, and I had fun at the swingers club. I that educational room, I learned a lot there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, it'll scar you when you have a biker sitting on a heart-shaped bed just waiting. Well, and I get that. And part of it is what, it's not, it's like, yeah, don't get a vision board, but have some idea of what your end goal is. Because I kind of started thinking about that for myself. I mean, so many people, it's like, I want arenas, I want this, I want that. And it's like, I really just wanted to sell theaters and go out or clubs and be proud of my material.
Yeah.
And right now I'm doing that and I'm making good money. And my goal is to sustain that.
Yeah. Is
And
it
I've been
weird
able,
though that you're like kind of looking around, you're like, wait, I'm doing the thing that I want, like,
yeah, I mean, it is if I wouldn't have, I've squandered so much making stuff and side projects and everything that now I'm getting back in the saddle where I constantly have a self-destructive pattern where even if it's not drugs or alcohol, it's something where I feel like I cut myself off sometimes because I know it'll make me work harder. And I have to teach myself not to do that. Like I don't allow myself, I'm sort of the opposite where I don't allow myself to be happy, as weird as that sounds, because unless I'm around my kid and stuff, but it's like if I allow myself to be happy, I'm always afraid that somebody's going to take it away from me. And because they have, I mean, it has been so many times in my life that it's easier for me to just go into something and be like, okay, this probably won't work out, but I'm going to do the best I can while I'm there. And that way it never hurts. And I know that that sounds weird or whatever, but that's just sort of what self-destruction does. And that's the thing that I focus on is trying to not be that person anymore, where it's like, no, just be happy with what you earned. It's okay to relax. It's okay that you've been on the road for 20 years. It's okay that you've earned something. It's okay to take any amount of pride in it. And that's what that's what I struggle with, because yeah, it is weird to look around and go, oh yeah, I'm doing the thing that I wanted to do because I am, and it's hard for other people to see it, and there's so many people want to knock you down for it too.
oh yeah. I mean,
And I never realized that.
like you'll be doing that room that um they want to be doing, and then they'll be like, oh well, he's only doing shit like that, and you're like, you're just saying that because you're not doing that room. Like it's
Hmm.
there's I don't know. It's as I've been doing this longer, the tighter my circle seems to be getting. Like I just it's I think it's important to be friendly, but I'm like, fuck man, I sometimes you put yourself out there and then you just end up like getting burned, you know?
No,
I
I've been
mean,
overly
you know.
friendly to a lot of people. Yeah, yeah. I've been overly friendly to a lot of people, and I highly doubt there's a lot of people that would tell you that I'm not.
Yeah.
But I've had a lot of people burn me, and it's because they didn't agree with a choice I made or a show that I'm on or anything like that. And frankly, it's like I don't. At some point, you just have to go, all right, I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I don't think there's any point in this career where it doesn't weigh on you. I mean, it's going to. I mean, that's the difference between a career and a job is I believe emotional investment, because what you're doing is you're believing in yourself, you're selling yourself, and you are the product. So when is that not going to weigh on you?
Unless you're fucking insane.
Well, yeah, there's sociopaths who I'm sure are very successful in our field. That are in entertainment.
Yeah.
I've met a few, but it's it's but there, for people that have human feelings and emotions, it definitely is something where it's not an easy thing to deal with, because you've put yourself out there to the public who, Carlin said it best. Look at the average person and then realize that 50% of the population is dumber than that. People are stupid and rude and they're allowed to comment. You
Yeah.
just eventually have to get used to that and go, all right, this guy feels I should be dead over a joke about a squirrel. And that's just that.
Yeah.
And you have to keep pushing because it's for you, it's for your family, it's for whoever. I mean, it sucks so much at times, but there's so many times of great reward that you have to like really take in, because if you don't, and you're looking at this to be happy, which I think you are one of the happier people I've met, to be honest.
Really.
Oh, for sure.
That's
Absolutely.
that's terrifying to me a little bit because
I
I've
don't
maybe I'm presenting happiness, but I mean, it
I think you
depends.
present it, yes. I don't know how it's ever 100% genuine, but you're not an unhappy person. You're not like this walking, like, you know, depressed. Like, I seriously have to put on a face and be like, "Hey,
Oh
how's
yeah.
everybody? Great," and then in my head, I'm just like, "Oh man, I just wish I was dead."
Yeah.
But I don't want to be that anymore. I don't, I work on that, and it, I think it's part of the humility that allows you to be decent on stage. I'm just rambling now, proving my own narcissism.
Well, actually, I want to be like cognizant of your time. So I got a few listener questions for you. People just like that were on the YouTube channel that chimed in. And then we can get you out of here. But Sam Click on Instagram asks, who or what do you watch when you need a really good laugh?
Um, I read actually. I read a lot of Jack Handy.
Mm-hmm.
He has a couple books that are hilarious. One is called The Stench of Honolulu.
I've read that.
Oh my God, it's so funny, dude. It's just pointless. And then you um but I guess what do I watch? I probably watch South Park or older seasons of Family Guy, Kids in the Hall, and yeah, really anything that I can kind of find that I think is amusing, but as strange as it seems, I don't watch a lot of comedy.
Same. I by the time I get home, I'm like, I think I piss off my girlfriend sometimes because I'm so sick of watching. Like you see it being made constantly that you're like, I
Yeah.
this is the what do you go to usually if you're not watching comedy though?
I usually go to horror. I really enjoy horror, and I really enjoy I guess as far as cinema, I like horror, I like drama, I like suspense. I like action. I mean, I'm a huge film buff, so I've always been into indie film and kind of weird avant-garde stuff anyway.
Yeah,
So, I go to any of that stuff. So it doesn't, I mean, you name it, I've probably watched it because I try to watch a movie every night.
dude, I'm the same way. I've seen. Well, I grew up like out in the country a little bit. We
Mhm.
didn't have cable. We had like satellite, so we'd have Stars, which is like Direct TV's like movie
Oh, I know
channel. Yeah,
Stars.
yeah,
We
yeah,
had it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you couldn't rewind anything. So I've seen like 60% of every movie from like 1995 to 2010.
That's that's how that's how growing up I was. We started with having this like wind box of 36 channels when cable first came out, and we had all the way to 36 that was HBO. And like I think 33 was Showtime.
Yeah,
And yeah, as it my mom uh she was bipolar, so she had every channel for her downswings. And so I could watch anything. So I would, but it was you couldn't rewind or anything. So I would watch large portions of movies like every day. And that's actually, and I loved indie film, man. Like I would go to indie film theaters when I was in middle school. I always loved that stuff, like still do. And then it was the indie boom because it was the mid 90s when I was
hmm
in middle school. So it was like Clerks had just come out when I was 12.
so good.
And yeah, and like it was 92, Reservoir Dogs came out, and like all these movies, Pulp Fiction was up front. Like it was such a great time in film. And then you'd walk to any video store and there'd be just all these movies like Bad Lieutenant, and these things that you had never, and then my dad would be introducing me to movies like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly and Goodfellas, and all these things that I grew up in the 80s watching every comedy with like John Candy and anybody else from SNL, Ghostbusters, all that. So like I always had this huge I don't know, I always had this huge love for movies. Like right now I'm like looking at a stack of movies, and it's like right over here it's like Labyrinth, The Night Before, Batman Lego Movie, VHS, The Last Dragon, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, Moneyball, Happy Gilmore, Ghost Rider, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Like that's just the front of like some DVDs I have because I can watch them with my kids. Stand by Me, Gremlins. Like I just I don't know. It's like I just put on anything to kind of drift away. And I like, because of the movie Evil Dead, I think I just enjoy low budget horror done with a lot of passion.
Yeah. Yeah, I love movies. I when you when you said Clerks just a second ago, I was just watching that fucking Clerks 2 scene where they're like the
Yeah.
guy has the ring and
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
like he's one ring to find them or whatever, and
Yeah,
he's like, I
yeah.
will. That whole scene about like how gay it was at the end of that movie, and he's like, I thought he was gonna brick in Sam's mouth, and like, dude, that whole Clerks, Mallrats, like Chasing Amy, all those movies. I seriously, that's like the one time of the day where I fucking feel normal. It's just like I don't have to talk to anybody. Just put on some movie that's like nobody would even give a shit about this movie and just like drift off like that. It's
Yeah, like I had Kevin Smith liked when I tweeted out how much I liked Tusk because I saw it in the theater. Because I did. I thought it was this really interesting idea that he just got high and said, "We'll make a movie about a guy becoming a walrus." And they used that dude who from Red State, who's just I forget his name, Michael something, this phenomenal actor. And but yeah, like that. Where what I like about Kevin Smith, and I've seen him live a couple times, is it was just he always just seemed to go for whatever it was. And even when I watched Clerks 3, I talked to so many people who were like, oh, I don't know, I hated it. But then I talked to people who were into film at the same time as me, and we all loved it because it was this really like nice tribute to how much that meant to him. So you have this movie about him making the movie Clerks. You have Dante and Randall making Clerks, and I laughed out loud through it, and I thought it was like kind of a really interesting and beautiful movie because it was this like tip of the hat to this independent film era of like Robert Rodriguez and Tarantino and Kevin Smith and like all these people that came up through Miramax. I realized Weinstein was a piece of shit, but it's like, I'm sorry. At that time, they put out the best movies imaginable.
did you ever see that? I think it was a Kevin Smith movie with the guy that played Dante about the clown.
No, my friend wrote that. My friend Brian wrote that movie.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah, yeah.
Brian, what's his last
Uh,
name?
Brian Johnson.
Brian,
And
yeah.
that's why I always get his name's Brian Johnson. I always get it confused because of AC/DC. But yeah, he Brian Johnson wrote it. And I found that movie crazy enough in us was it a Sam Goody? Or no, it was Musicland in Detroit. And I went in and I saw it, and it was a View Askew production, so I bought it. And like years later I was on Kumia's show, and like Brian's there and we're talking, and I realized like probably into talking to him, I'm like, wait, you were in the movie Vulgar? And he's like, no, I made that movie. I wrote and directed that movie. And yeah, Kevin Smith funded it. That movie is insane.
It's literally a kid's clown gets ass raped. I mean,
Yes.
insane, and it was before the internet really, before Facebook, before MySpace, like all that shit. And so like you just, I mean, like I came across this movie. I think my brother was like, "Hey, you should check out this movie," and I I watched it. It was like, "What the fuck?" Like it was kind of that definition of like an indie movie that just went as far as it could.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and it was all those guys from Mallrats and Clerks and like people that you recognize from those movies.
Yeah.
It's wild,
Yeah, it
man.
was great.
All right, let me ask you one more question. Sorry to people that submitted. Just shout out to a couple of these people. Marsha Mills.
What does Marsha want to know?
She wanted to know what
Hmm.
made you decide to finally get clean and sober.
Hmm. What? No, my 13th, I'm kidding. My 13th arrest um is when I hit my rock bottom with alcohol. I was put in solitary confinement because I wanted to fight a guy who was much larger than me, who had beaten his wife, but he kept crying through the night, and he was like, "I'm so sorry, Dave. Do you think she'll forgive me?" And I'm like, Probably not. You beat your wife. Shut the fuck up or I'm gonna murder you. And apparently I had yelled this so much that I then got put into solitary. And the person walking me, a female cop comes and gets me, cuffs me like through the bars and is walking me to solitary. And she goes, "You threatened that man's life several times." And I was like, "Yeah, I did."
But it was
And
like
she goes,
sarcastically.
"Well, yeah," she said, like, she goes, "I know what he's in for, though, so we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen, but I do have to move you to a different cell." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." But yeah, the 13th arrest, hitting rock bottom, and that's what got me sober. And yeah,
Yeah, dude. Those sharing a jail cell sucks. It's
dude,
it's the worst. I when I got locked up down in Indiana, they put me in a room in a cell with like just two beds, and there were two dudes in there already.
yeah,
And I'm like, I got my stupid mat, and they're like, get in there. I was like, where? And they're like, the floor. And so they just like stuffed me in a cell with two
yeah,
other guys. And the night I was sleeping in there, I like couldn't sleep. The lights are on and shit, you know. And I turn because I'm sleeping on my side. I turn, and the guy that was on the lower bunk was sleeping with his eyes open, and he's just staring at me. And I think it might have been the most scared I've ever
his
been in my
knee
life.
blades, old Jack. Yeah, it's gotta be, dude.
And I just turned the other way, you know, like I was just like just going. And honestly, he might have thought I
That's
was
good.
like
Yeah,
presenting.
I was gonna say, yeah, put your ass towards him. That's a good move.
Oh, I was terrified, man. It was the worst. All right, one last question, because we went through Marsha's pretty quick. I'll let you choose. What's the most difficult part about being a comic in today's social atmosphere? That's the NDT podcast. Or what are your top 5 rappers of all time? That's on Twitter, the Standard Man.
Oh man, I can do both real quick.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, my top 5 rappers of all time? I guess I would have to go Run DMC, Eminem, well, especially in the beginning because of how he was kind of going against everything. Eazy-E, uh, Slum Village, and A Tribe Called Quest.
Okay. All
I'd also
solid.
squeeze Wu-Tang in there. But if you guys have never heard of Slum Village or Jay Dilla, I would highly recommend it. Out of Detroit. But yeah, probably right. I think those would probably be top 5.
Atmosphere's probably in there for mine. I'm trying to think of. It's hard to do top 5 rappers off the top of your head.
It is because it's like you also put it in groups and everything. I liked Eazy-E because he was hilarious.
Yeah.
So like to me, he was always comedy and like great at shit talk.
Yeah.
So that's why I loved him so much. But then you have like albums that I love. Like I love Warren G Regulators, but it's because of Nate Dogg, who's dead.
Yeah.
But it's because he carried the vocals so well.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then it's
I
like,
fucking love that song. It's
yo, dude.
just because of Nate Dogg.
Yeah, and it's like I love Nas. I saw him live last summer actually for the first time because they were with Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
And I went to the Wu-Tang Nas concert and he's just unreal, dude. He's just so good. So I'd probably put him in the top 5, especially if we're talking solo. Um, Easily top 5 if we're talking solo. I mean rappers. That's why I'd throw Eminem in there just because I think he's the best technical rapper of all time, even though people tend to disagree. I just think he's what he came out and did and the way that he can flow is absolutely mesmerizing. And
Did you prefer him on or off drugs?
um well, like all good bands, the drugs don't hurt, but it's nice that he's got a message now.
Yeah. Yeah. That first album though, Recovery, I think it gets shit on quite a bit.
And it's not bad.
It's not bad. It's a good album.
But the Marshall Mathers, the first one, the
LP, yeah.
LP, is my favorite because it was the first one that showed a different side to him, which was about growing up, and it was more than like the Slim Shady alter ego was never really what I liked. I
Yeah.
always kind of liked the more personal version of the original Marshall Mathers LP.
Yeah, that one song with Dre, um, Guilty Conscience.
Hmm.
I think that was which album was that on?
Um, I don't think it's. I think it's. Isn't that Relapse? It could be on Relapse. I could
No,
be
it
wrong.
was the first one that he released. So it was before Slim.
Oh, it was this. It was before the Slim Shady
Yeah,
LP.
yeah. It was that. Fuck, I can't remember the name of the album, but it it was wild, dude. It's really
Before.
good.
Oh, it was on. Was it on Dre's album? You mean?
No, it.
It wasn't on Aftermath. Because the other guy is in Bad Meets Evil, who I really think is an amazing rapper, and I'd put in my top five is Royce the Five Nine.
Yeah, yeah,
And he's out of Detroit, and dude, he's a beast, man. And
yeah.
then I mean, but you also have to look at like,
Were
yeah,
you into
Jade.
D12?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like
I
Proof a
mean,
lot.
Proof was great, dude. There was a sign on I-94 in Detroit up until just a couple years ago that said R.I.P. Proof. Um, but yeah, there was. I mean, then it's tough to say too because then you have Biggie Smalls, who I think is absolutely just amazing, but he only lived to be 25. The catalog that Tupac put out is insane, considering he also lived to be, I think, about that at that age as well. Um, there's so many great rappers that really put it in top five is very difficult. But I would say like everybody I just named are people who I very much love.
Yeah. All right, last question then. Well, most difficult part about being a comic in today's social atmosphere.
Honestly, it's people presuming everything about your politics and your thoughts and thinking they know everything about you, and the idea that human beings aren't layered and can have different opinions and different viewpoints, and that the loudest people out there are the extremes of both sides. When you're a comic, you should be able to laugh at everything, and it shouldn't be about only your voice being heard or listened to. And a lot of people can't seem to grasp that. Um, and I think that's the largest problem now is there's people who won't even give good comics a chance because of something they may have said politically. And that means that people are more aligned with a politician who is completely and utterly full of shit than they are with an entertainer who admits they are.
Pretty concise,
Thank
dude.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have no rebuttal there, dude. I appreciate the time. I know you're busy, and always love hanging out with you. Is there what can people if they want to come check out more of your stuff? Like, where's the best stuff to where's the best place to find your stuff?
Um, DaveLandau.com. And again, sorry about this camera. If anybody was watching the whole time, I dropped my computer. We'll pretend that happened.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
there was
blurry. I
there
don't
was
know
a
why.
little bit of a delay with some of the like video captioning, so I'm hoping the guy can like align the audio with that because I was getting that like weird like you were
Oh,
talking
okay.
the timing of it. So if people have been watching, it's driving you crazy. I apologize. It's we're working with what we got over Zoom right now, and
Yes.
always appreciate people tuning in. But where's DaveLandau.com? What other?
DaveLandau.com. And then you can catch me. Normal World, just look that up. It's on youtube.com/ the DT Landau. I don't know why I made it that name, but it's the channel I've had, and I have had it for 10 years, and I just started putting stuff on it like, 2 months ago, like an idiot. And yeah, so just go to that. There's some backlogs of like Louder with Crowder, the Anthony Cumia show, uh, the Anthony Cumia show with Artie Lang, bunch of stuff. And then I do have a special coming out soon, which will be available to purchase online.
Cool. Yeah, let me know when you do drop that, and I'll plug it on our end too.
Please do.
Yeah, man.
Smokey the
So,
Bear. Only you can prevent forest fires.
dude, thank you so much for coming on, and everybody listening. Thank you. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure and rate and review us wherever you're listening. And then if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that notifications bell so you don't miss our upcoming content. If you have any questions for Dave or myself, throw them in the comment section. And as always, follow us on Instagram at FNFpod. We're going to leave you with Jaga.
I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. I just make the waves, I don't write them. I can hear the lyrics in my spirit as I write them. Why you wanna walk and talk just like them? I can't get caught up in all the hype and the excitement. Welcome to my wave pool, my wave pool. 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 Welcome to my wave pool.